It's time for the Mad Dawg Show, coming to you live from the Park Group studio in the heart of the Bulldog Nation. The Mad Dawg Show is proudly sponsored by the Sanford Company, Fincher's Barbecue, Sellers Construction, Go Clean Co., Cherokee Brick, Progressive Communications, J. Lee Attorney at Law, Ortho Georgia, Pelicano Construction, Jags Pizzeria and Pub, Bib Distributing, the Butler Auto Group, the Park Group, Corporate Connection, the Dog Bone, and Bulldog Illustrated. Now, here he is, your host, the Mad Dawg.
Welcome back. So, I'm going to dispense with the usual BS because I'm sick of it. I'm tired of coddling you, telling you what you want to hear, because it's not fair to you and it's not fair to me, really, because the reality is we're not as good as we were last year. We're not elite, not yet anyway. But the good news is we've got plenty of time to become elite. We have the players and we definitely have the coaches to do that. And just because this is a bye week doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's not. It's going to be tough love. Look, I love our dogs. You know that. And I know that y'all love them too, of course. But 7 games into this season, I can't even put an identity onto this team. I don't know what they are other than they're very young and they're very talented. Are we elite defensively? I don't think so. I mean, we might be elite compared to all the other defenses out there, but historically elite like last year, I don't think so. I'm not even close to convinced that we're elite like we were last year. And are we elite on offense? Probably not. I mean, look, listen, I'm trying to be honest here, and we're in the trust tree. We're here where we can share our innermost feelings and emotions. And right now, I'm kind of scared about this team. I feel a little bit vulnerable about them. And if you're being honest with yourself, you probably are too. I mean, look, you probably feel the exact same way that I do. And so we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, the big fat elephant that got slayed by a gang of redneck inbred volunteer hillbillies this past week. And we're going to talk about our fears, such as our inconsistent run blocking. Because if you haven't noticed that we're inconsistent with our run blocking, then you need to have your eyes checked. Our running backs are routinely met in the backfield by the opposition. So there's that. We're going to talk about, our inability to get injured players back on the field. Dr. Ryan Schnetzer with Ortho Georgia is going to help us with that. We're going to talk about what if we lose to that gang of inbred redneck hillbillies from the north. But what about if we lost to the lowly lizards of Florida first? And we have to talk about, get ready because this is going to be bombastic. It's heresy. It's borderline treasonous to dare think this, much less utter it. And that, my friends in the Bulldog Nation, is this terrifying thought. What if we don't make it to the SEC championship game? Huh? Have you thought about that? Okay, so everything is going on the table now. So let's start with the worst case scenario. Brace for impact, because this is going to hurt a lot. What if we lose out? We lose to everyone, including Tech. Then what happens? Well, we go 7-5, and I'll tell you where we end up. We end up at the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. That's right. That is the name of an actual bowl, the Wasabi Fenway Bowl in Boston. I didn't make that up. It's an actual bowl game, and it's on Friday, December 17th. Should that happen, I predict that we will play 6-6 Oklahoma. And what if we lose that game and we finish 7-6 and we're the laughing stock of the college football universe? Okay, I warned you that first scenario is really bad. We had to get that out of the way. We had to face our worst fears, embrace them, and come to terms, and then move on to a slightly worser scenario. So we lose out, but we beat Tech, and we finish 8-4. Still disgusting, I know. Now we upgrade our bowl experience and we go to the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl in Shreveport, where we will be fighting it out with a 7-5 Notre Dame, which I know is nauseating. But in this nightmare scenario, at least we would beat the panties off of those drunken Irish gingers by a score of 42-10. Next, a less worser situation. We beat Tech in Florida, but we still lose to Mississippi State. We still lose to Kentucky, and we still lose to Tennessee, and we finish 9-3. And suddenly we find ourselves in the Big Apple on December 29th for another bowl that is a mouthful, the illustrious Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. That's right, we're in the Bronx, and we're duking it out with New Yorkers, literally, because we play the 10-2 Syracuse men who are orange. The Orange Men. What does that mean? I don't know. You don't know either. But it means we win by a score of 50-7 to finish the year with 10 wins. But we would still just feel like the tallest elf in the room. So there's that. And now a scenario that we wouldn't necessarily puke on, but we would dry heave all over it painfully. We finished the season 10-2. Our two losses are to Kentucky and Tennessee. And now we go to the Tony the Tiger Bowl in scenic El Paso. Scenic El Paso are words I just uttered that are literally drowning with sarcasm, because in the godforsaken land that is El Paso, we meet everybody's favorite mascot, the Beavers. The Beavers of Oregon State. Who likes beavers? Dogs like beavers. That's who. Our dogs will tear that beaver up, y'all. And once our dogs get that delicious taste of beaver on their lips, they will get worked up into a frenzy. And as a practical matter, getting beaver hairs out of your mouth is just simply no fun. At any rate, the Dogs win 16-9. Dogs on top, 16-9. Dogs on top, 16-9. Attention, the next scenario is highly possible. We finished the season 11-1, but our only loss is to Tennessee. However, Tennessee runs the table. They're 12-0. So we don't go to the SEC championship, but hold on a second, because in the West, in the SEC West, another team is 11-1, and it's not Alabama. It's Ole Miss. And so while they lose the Egg Bowl to Mississippi State for their sole loss, they also beat Alabama, thus giving them their second SEC loss. So now Bama's sitting at the house at 10-2. No SEC championship for them. Tennessee beats Ole Miss in the SEC championship. Ole Miss doesn't make the playoffs because now they have two losses. Ohio State does make it because they run the table by virtue of their joke of a schedule. Tennessee, of course, makes it because they ran the table. And the fourth college football playoff team, well, that would be us. Why? Our competition would be Michigan, who will have 0 quality wins. Possibly TCU, but they will probably stumble at least once somewhere. And there's a remote chance that it would be UCLA. They play Oregon this week. Oregon's probably going to beat them. And of everybody that could possibly jump us, it ain't going to be Oregon. And I think we all know why. So all I'm saying is get ready to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because in the next few weeks, listen, it's all going to come down to 4 games in 21 days. If we run the table, that's great, because then the SEC championship is a de facto bye week. Whatever happens, we're getting in. And again, what do I think is going to happen? My glass is half full always. I predict that we're going to go 15-0 and that the mailman is going to win the Heisman. And that's right. I still believe that's going to happen. And that's why we still have the mailman for Heisman shirts. Heismans are won in the month of November. They're not won in September. They're not won in October. So go to themaddawg.com, www.themaddawg.com, and get one of these shirts. Now, get yours, get it today, and let's get down to business. Let's get this show on the road. Get the picture, you guys. First, we rewind Vandy and we tee up the bye week. Second, it's the Mad Dawg Injury Report, sponsored by Ortho Georgia, featuring former UGA offensive lineman Dr. Ryan Schnetzer. Third, Burt Hodges from the Dog Bone has stats to share. Next, it's a head fake because it would be, and actually it should be, the man, the myth, the legend that is Buffalo. But he is out sick. So then I pump fake because Dogger, our gambling guru, is off this week. He is deep in his gambling lab, crunching numbers for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party next week. And lastly, we're going to round it up with me doing some ranking and some raving about the rankings. First, let's go to last week's game. So, Vandy, do we really even want to rewind this game 55-0? I mean, we've beaten them in the last 2 years, a combined total of 117-0. That's the second worst beating for 2 years in SEC history. Vandy sucks at football. That is not news. That is not a revelation. They hurt our strength of schedule every year. I got a crazy idea. Why don't we replace Vandy with Texas A&M? Texas A&M is a team that we have not played the entire time they have been in the SEC, and that is 10 freaking years, and that makes no sense. But I digress. Look, I'll shoot you straight. Once again, I was in the Sanford Company Skybox. Thanks again to John Neal and the entire Neal family for that. And so I'm up there, and the complimentary candy bar is more interesting than the Vandy game. The bottomless Starburst jar distracted me. Then Champ Bailey came by to say hello, and he's a big distraction. Champ Bailey is a stud. He looks like he could play today. He really does. A lady sitting beside me when he walked in literally gasped and said, "Is that a movie star?" And I laughed and I said, "Yeah, the movie star who wears a gold NFL Hall of Famer sports coat." But in her defense, the guy does look like a famous movie star. And yet there he is, the most down-to-earth dude that you will ever meet. You talk to him, and he's so focused on what you're saying. Meanwhile, you got all these people around you, clamoring to get pictures with him, bouncing off of him. And he's focused on you and what you're saying. He makes you feel like you're the only one in the room, and he's talking to you like you're old friends. And the ability to make you feel that way is rare for anyone, much less a star of his status. He just greets you with a smile like you're an old friend, and you can't fake that. He's just totally genuine. And we recorded an interview with him several months ago, and it was awesome. But when our producer went to edit it, there was a problem with the audio, a big problem. The interview was just simply unusable. It was unairable. We couldn't do it. So we told Champ about it. And we said, "Look, we feel terrible. We can't use this." What did he say? He said, "Let's just do it again. Let's just do it again, Mad Dawg." And to that, I barked, "You've got it, Champ." So that's coming. There's that. And I can't wait. All right. Anyway, back to the game, if you want to call it a game. So at one point, Stetson was 14 out of 15. We pretty much moved the ball at will, kept them from doing anything. For me, it was awesome to see Eric Gilbert not only back in there playing, also see him get his first touchdown. It was also awesome to see Cash Jones get his first TD. And so, again, I refuse to waste much time on Vandy other than to say I can't stand them. I wish that they would disband their pathetic football program and that we could replace them with a real football team. But enough about that, other than to say this about the mailman, about Staquavius, also known as Stetson Fleming Bennett IV. He had an 80% completion ratio. Let me just say that one more time for you in the back. He had an 80% completion percentage. That means that for every 5 passes he threw, he completed 4 of them. He also had 289 yards and 2 TDs. Again, Heisman's aren't won in September and October. He's slowly building his stats. And when we get to the meat of our schedule, that's when he's going to show everybody again what he's all about. So let's focus right now on our next opponent. And that opponent is bye week. And Kirby's going to tell you and anybody else that wants to listen that the Dawgs will focus on the team most likely to beat them this week, and that is themselves. They're going to clean up things like inconsistent run blocking. They're going to tighten up timing, and hopefully, maybe most importantly, they will get well. Because when we hit the field for that Florida game, like I said, we will enter a 21-day span of 4 games that will determine our season. And the only one that matters is the next one. Forget Tennessee. Tennessee does not matter to us right now, okay? We play our most hated rival first. We play the gaudy, cheesy dudes wearing jorts and gold jewelry like ankle bracelets, and the females with bad hairdos and too much makeup covering their wrinkled, sun-damaged faces, sporting tube tops and yoga pants. These same females whose body types dictate that they have no business in such attire. And then they litter the streets with this sideshow of obnoxious carnival clowns and circus freaks, all cheering for the lizards from south of our border. And if you don't think that they could ruin our season, think again. They've done it too many times to count. If we let Richardson run wild and get hot, then it could get ugly. Prepare again to be uncomfortable. Prepare to mix up extra strong libations for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. And oh, by the way, my inside sources tell me that some of you will be tailgating for this game from a parking lot in Savannah, pre-gaming for Widespread Panic's Halloween show. And I hope that we get to do all of the tricking and get all of the treating that day. But more on that next week, because now it's time for
the Mad Dawg Injury Report with Dr. Ryan Schnetzer.
What's going on, Dr. Schnetzer?
Hey, Dave. Good to be back.
Good to have you back, man. We got some guys that we can't get off the injured reserve. I mean, it looked like watching warm-ups that A.D. Mitchell had regressed.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's coming off. It sounds at this point, the way it's been going is probably, that kind of dreaded high ankle sprain, right? They've just been taking it day to day. So I think we now would be at like the 4 or the 5 week mark on that.
Yeah.
So those are tough injuries to come back from. Everybody's a little bit, especially as a receiver, having to really stress that ankle. Hopefully, with the week off, getting a little rest, getting a lot of treatment in the with the training room, that they can get him back and get him out on the field for Florida.
All right, let me ask you this: so you're coming off a high ankle sprain, you retweak it. Does the clock go back to 0? Or is it just kind of depend?
It's really hard to tell. I mean, certainly can it go back to 0? Yes, it can. Right.
Okay.
It just really depends on how much damage, how much you kind of re-injured it, or how much had it recovered before you got out there. And so I think that's one of the reasons they're probably taking him a little slow with him. They don't want to have that happen. And also I think for him that he's kind of worried about the same thing. Like, hey, I really want to get out there. And sometimes that's a hard line to walk. Turning. When do you let them get back out there?
Right.
There's one thing playing hurt and there's another thing playing injured, right?
Yeah.
So, these guys, they want to get out there and they want to play, but at some point, sometimes you have to hold them back a little bit and say, look, we need to save you for the big picture. Look at the whole season. While every game is important, if you get out there now and one play costs the rest of the season, then, we got to be able to balance that and find the right time to really let them get back out there when they're recovered enough to want to be safe to themselves and be able to do what they need to do, and then be able to participate and bring value to what they're doing.
I've never heard that before. That's good. The difference between playing hurt and playing injured. That's a great way to put it. And
it's a hard line. I mean, it really is. Obviously, coaches and fans, we want to see them out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes only the player really knows what they're feeling and what they're going through, and they kind of understand. There's certain things you can play through, right? Bumps and bruises per se. I mean, not just that, but those are the easiest thing, right? You can play through that. But we'll look at kind of A.D. Mitchell with the high ankle sprain. If he's limited or if it's cutting him back, or if he goes out there and gets it re-injured, I mean, he could be out for the whole year.
Right.
Same thing with Jalen Carter and that MCL sprain. We want to get him out there as soon as we can, but we got to let that thing really heal up, because if he were to get out there and push it early before it's healed, there's a chance that he could re-injure it and even make it worse than it was to begin with, and then be out for longer.
Okay, so Jalen injured it in the Missouri game.
Mm-hmm.
Next game is Vandy. That's 1 week.
Yep.
Bye week is 2. Florida is 3. Is that enough time to come back from that?
You had the Auburn game in there too, right?
Oh yeah, Auburn game. So 4.
Auburn,
Yeah,
Vandy,
you're right. 4 weeks.
Right. So, and what we've been hearing all along, there was a grade 1 sprain. So I think that puts him, at the very beginning, I was thinking, okay, grade 1 sprain, we're thinking 2 to 3 weeks. That puts us right at the off week. He gets an extra week to get over that. And then he's back for the Florida game. So I think it's very reasonable to expect him to be back and hopefully be full speed at the Florida game.
So from there, Kendall Milton, he had a sprained groin, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what they're calling a sprained groin, thigh injury kind of.
Right.
Didn't play last week. Again, this thing is kind of those nagging things that you really just, the only thing that gets these things better is time.
Right.
Right. And unfortunately, we only have 7 days between or 6 days between games. So time is really not on our side. As one of the, I don't know if you watch Hard Knocks and when Dan Campbell was talking about, preseason, that first day of practice, that's the best you're going to feel all year long. Right? That's your top. Once you get going, you're going to be bumped and bruised. You're going to have something hurting at some point every day for the rest of that season. And so it's really got to understand that and understand what you can do. But Milton's one of those things. Again, he's just going to have to give some time. The good thing is we got this off week to hopefully get these guys better. Really work with Ron Corson in the training room, the great athletic training staff there, and get them better and get them back out on the field.
So the other big injury that I'm aware of is Smile Mondon.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about him?
Again, he's missed Auburn and Vanderbilt. Again, they're calling it an ankle injury. They're very tight-lipped about exactly what these are. We've talked about it before, kind of the dreaded high ankle sprain, right? You look at a minimum of 6 weeks with that. So I think he's missed 2 games. He's got an off week. We're at week 4 next week. It's really just going to depend on what it was, what type of injury it was, and we still don't really know what that is yet.
All right, when you have a high ankle sprain, how does that typically happen? Is it you're pushing off? Is it somebody hits your ankle?
There's several different mechanisms. It's usually it's going to be kind of a rotational injury. So if your foot's planted and you turn, and it's really like a tear or a stretch of the ligaments between the 2 bones in the lower leg.
Okay.
So it's called the interosseous membrane. Exactly what it's called. I mean, it's the kind of like the connection between the tibia and the fibula at the lower part of the ankle. Then there's certain degrees, is it a complete tear or is it, it's a stretch or an injury, but, it just takes a while to get over that. So normally it's from a plant and then a turn or somebody maybe grabbing their leg and turning it, I'm not saying somebody purposely did it, but when they're getting tackled and they're getting grabbed, and that can happen that way.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's just one of those things where, you hear about it all the time, and then I've never really thought about, or you never really see that happen and go, okay, yeah, he definitely has a high ankle sprain based on what just happened. Yeah,
it's really, it's hard to say. When you see them happen in person, it's really hard. Occasionally you can see, and from seeing enough of them, I can say, okay, that's definitely a high ankle sprain. But a lot of times they're really, when you look at them, they're fairly benign when you first see it happen. And it's just kind of localized. Where do they hurt, right? Are they hurting more kind of towards the foot, kind of that low ankle sprain? Or are they hurting higher up the ankle and going up the leg a little bit for that high ankle sprain?
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, they're a very common injury we see. And it just takes time. I mean, there's really not a whole lot. There was some, a couple of years ago, there was a big talk with Jalen Hurts, and I think Tua had the surgery on their ankle for the high ankle sprain.
Right.
I don't think that's really an indicative procedure or something that should be done. Certainly there are people out there doing it. Obviously, the guys in Athens aren't really pursuing that, which I think is probably a good idea. But
so that's kind of controversial then to some aspect, because you're just, all you're doing with that is a procedure to get them on the field quicker.
Correct. Yeah. So they're basically going in and putting what they call a tight rope,
right,
basically between the 2 bones. So they're drilling a hole through the bones, putting a piece of rope between them and pulling it tight to recreate that interosseous membrane, that ligament between them. So, obviously it's a fairly straightforward procedure, but it's a procedure. And with any procedure, there are complications that can happen, right?
Right.
And so putting somebody through that type of procedure for an injury that really doesn't require, that's going to get better on its own with just time. So it makes it kind of a very controversial, procedure to be done.
I didn't know we were going to get into controversy today. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, who else is on your injury list? Is there anybody else that you're watching that you're concerned about?
Obviously we saw Aaron Smith come back, he's playing. Maybe a little slow. I think a little hesitant out there still, but it's good to see him get back out there and making some plays. I think that's really about it. I think we touched on most of it.
Yep.
Obviously the Larry McConkey went down, right? It was like another ankle injury, and I think Coach Smart after the game said he thought that if it would have mattered, he could have gotten back in.
Okay.
So it didn't sound like it was too much. Again, they keep things pretty tight-lipped, so we don't know really what it is. He was able to walk off, did have a pretty significant limp there, and they obviously kept him out for the rest of the game. So that's one to watch. Good thing is he's got a week to recover and then another week to get ready for the game, and then so we'll see where we are. But certainly the receivers have been banged up this year. That's where I feel like the majority of our injuries have come at receiver to a position that we were already kind of thin at to begin with.
Yeah.
So it really kind of hurt us. I think it's hurt the offense, kind of coming together and gelling a little bit, having multiple different people roll through there. So it'd be nice to get some guys back and get a little more stability to the receiving corps.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to McConkey, if Kirby's saying he could have come back in and played if he had to, that tells me that that's probably not a high ankle sprain.
Exactly. That's exactly what you would think. You think it's a low ankle sprain, probably a fairly minor injury. And I think in a big game, he's back in there. But I think a game like that where we had it well in hand, holding him out, giving him rest, not letting him aggravate it anymore was a good call.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it feels like a lot of times we're leaving our starters in there too long.
Yeah, you certainly want to keep them in there, keep them fresh, and the only way to get better is to get out there and get more time in there. And it's hard. You've been beating up on each other in practices since August. So it's nice to get out there and hit somebody else.
Right.
Then you want to get those second guys in there, right? Because of these injuries, you got to have somebody in there ready to go, and you want to have those second and third string guys, had some real game time reps. So again, it's a line you got to balance. You want those first string guys to get better and continue to improve, but you also want those those younger guys to learn what to do. So when do you put them in there, right? I mean, it's hard. Obviously, you try to get them in, into meaningful playing time. So you want to get them in earlier in the game, third quarter,
right?
Fourth quarter into the game. Both teams really have their second string in by then. So is that really meaningful playing time? I mean, a little bit, but still, they're not getting those reps against the first team guys for the other team.
True.
So, again, it's just one of those decisions coach has to make. Obviously, you got to balance that with the risk of injuries. But I mean, it's football. Injuries happen, unfortunately. I mean, it's a great sport, but it's brutal. It's hard, and you got to understand that that's just part of the game.
Well, you've got homework for next week. The homework is you're to come back and tell us that everybody is back for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. That is your job.
I certainly hope that I can do that. That would be a great day for all of us.
Dr. Ryan Schnetzer from Ortho, Georgia. Once again, thank you very much, sir.
All right. I appreciate it, David.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
It's time for this week's Lowdown with the Dog Bone Report.
Welcome back, Burt Hodges from the Dog Bone. How you doing, my friend?
Mad Dawg, how you doing?
Man, I'm good. We're 7-0. We're undefeated, and we're number one, and we're the reigning national champs. So I don't know much better I could be.
And a bye week couldn't come at a better time.
Really couldn't.
I mean, just listen to that injury report. All the guys that have been out for weeks that we really need to get back for this 4-game stretch. I mean,
yes.
Man, this bye week couldn't come at a better time.
I could not agree more. It's time we can take a little break, savor where we're at, I think, before we basically run the gauntlet.
Yeah. And, I'm glad, after that scare we had with Kent State and Missouri that we've kind of bounced back these past 2 weeks, and we start to there's things that were going wrong in those 2 games we're kind of figuring out. So we're going into this bye week feeling good, I think. It's not like we're feeling after the Missouri game where we're like, man, what kind of team do we have?
Right.
We kind of, looking back on it now that we're 7 games in the season, those 2 games were really just anomalies, I think. And, we had a lot of things go wrong that had to go wrong to keep those guys in the game. Mainly turnovers. We turned the ball over, 5 or 6 times in those 2 games. We're going to keep teams in it doing that. But if we play our game and don't turn the ball over, not many teams are going to be able to hang with us.
I agree 100%. So, we talked about the fact I read an article, I think it was on the Dog Bone, that, Tennessee's probably going to be a 3:30 game. We know that Florida's going to be one. What other kind of stats and factoids have you dug up?
Well, a few weeks ago when I was on, we had discussed the ultimate stat that tells you whether you're a national championship contender or not, and that's net yards per play.
Right.
And I told you back then that it kind of had to cycle through a little bit. We had to get, at least midway through the season before you could start to really see the cream rise to the top. And it has now. I mean, we're at week 7. So, the teams that are contenders, they're starting to show up in that net yards per play. And there are really 4 teams at the top right now. Alabama is at the top with 2.96 net yards per play, which means that for every offensive play, they average about 3 yards more than every defensive play. So, right around 3, you're a national championship winner. And Alabama had a weird start to the season. They jumped all over some of these cupcake teams where they were averaging 8 yards per play on offense and giving up 2 yards per play on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's they've come back to the pack now. And so we're right behind them now. We're at 2.83 yards per play, which is right where we ended up last year.
Really?
So Bama 1, we're 2. Surprisingly, Ole Miss is 3. They're at 2 yards per play.
Okay.
And the guy at Get the Picture, he posts this every week, and he says to be in the college football playoff, you need to be above 2. If you're above 2, you're probably a CFP contender. If you're above 2.5, you're probably national champion. Last year, we were at 2.8 something, won the national championship. So 1, 2, 3, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee is in 4th at 1.87 yards per play. And really, the primary reason is because their defense is just giving up so many yards. I mean, their offense is great, obviously, but defensively, they're giving up 5.5 yards per play, whereas we're giving up 4.4 yards per play. I mean, that yard's a big difference in total stats. So
this stat is just fascinating to me because it's something that I've never heard about till you brought it up, and just the correlation between where you rank in that stat and how it translates into whether you even get to the CFP, what national champions look like. And so, for the other contenders, where is Clemson on that list?
Yeah, so he just does a rundown of the SEC.
Okay.
And so I don't know where everyone is at nationally. I know Ohio State. I'm pretty sure Ohio State has won. Clemson statistically does not look very good right now. They've had a couple of good games. They look good against NC State. But statistically, if they continue to play the way they have, they're going to lose to somebody. They're not playoff material right now. Not meaning that they can't be, but they haven't played that way so far. But within the SEC, it seems like there's a clear pecking order of 4 teams at the top. And then there's this big pack in the middle, which includes Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, LSU, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M. And they're all at around 1.2 to 0.5. They're all kind of right in that range, which you're decent. You're going to go 4-4 in the SEC doing that.
Yeah.
But, you're not going to go to the playoff. And then there's the bottom of the barrel, and that's Vandy at negative 1.4. Arkansas, surprisingly, is at negative 0.06, and then Auburn and Missouri at 0.2 and 0.32. So those bottom 4 teams, I mean, you can see it too. I mean, Auburn obviously has struggled. Missouri hasn't won an SEC game, right?
Right.
Arkansas, they played well at times, but at other times they have not, and they've really kind of come back down to earth. And then, Vandy's Vandy. But, looking at Vandy, and this was a surprising thing about last week, and this really gives me hope for our defense, is Vandy was averaging 30 points per game coming into our game.
What?
They scored 28 points against Ole Miss the week before we played them, and we completely shut them out. So, we made their stat look even worse because they didn't score. They only had the ball on our side of the field 2 times, I think.
And so a team that's at the top, like Ohio State, they're going to be at the top because their schedule's full of nobodies. The best team on their resume is Notre Dame. Notre Dame's 3-3, just lost at home to Stanford. And so they're going to juice those stats by virtue of who they play.
That's it. And they have so far this year. And to draw a comparison with Ohio State, because I was reading something about this earlier today, let me give you the rundown between us and Ohio State right now.
Please.
Right now, on offense, we're averaging 41.7 points per game. Okay. On defense, we're giving up 9.1 points per game. So our average margin of victory is 32.6.
Okay.
Pretty good. About like last year.
Yeah.
I think we averaged 32-point margin of victory in our SEC schedule last year, which is incredible.
Right.
And it's incredible we're doing it again. Ohio State, 48 points per game on offense, 15.7 on defense, 33-point margin of victory. So we have basically the same margin of victory Ohio State has at this point. And they've played all cupcakes.
Yeah, if you look at, and I'm going to talk about this later, the cumulative record of who they played, it's a losing record.
Yeah.
Versus us, it's a winning record. And their stats are juiced by, of all people, Toledo, who has the best record of anyone they've played. I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy. And yet, they still get talked up, and Herb Street's got them at number 1 right now. And, it's like, prove it. Prove it to somebody besides your weak schedule. And I think they've got when do they play anybody?
They don't play anybody until they play Michigan.
That's crazy.
And Michigan's in the same boat. They don't play anybody. I mean,
it just comes down to that for them.
Right. And it's funny you're bringing all this up because I'm about to get into that later on my rankings, but it's like we've got a hive mind right now and we're thinking the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing about that defensive points we've given up that's kind of crazy is for the year we have given up 64 points on defense. Alabama gave up 52 points last week.
That's nuts.
In 7 games, we've given up 64 points. Bama gave up. Now, granted, we've got the meat of our schedule coming up. So, it's proven time in the next 4 games. And those stats aren't going to look the same after we get through this 4-game stretch. But, we haven't played the cupcake schedule that Ohio State has.
Let me put you on the spot and test you. So you've already said how many points per game we're averaging. You said it's 9.1. What at this point last year was that number?
It was lower. It was a little bit lower. I want to say it was like 7 or 8. It wasn't that much lower. Yeah.
And everybody came into the season saying that our defense was going to be at least a touchdown worse. So far that's not true.
It really is remarkable if you think about the fact that we had 5 defensive starters go in the first round of the NFL draft, and we're back to almost where we were last year.
It's crazy.
It's a tribute to coaching. It's a tribute to us just recruiting guys at the positions we need to plug them into. If you look at, like, for example, Jalen Carter, Jalen Carter goes out. We're like, man, our best guy on defense is out. Well, we plug in Bear Alexander in certain situations. That guy's an animal. He's all over the field, you know?
Yeah, he is.
We lose Lewis Seen and Malachi Starks comes in and
Right.
it's playing right away. So our recruiting has been off the chart, but recruiting defensively has been, and I think this is one of the things that Alabama fans looking like long range view have been fretful about is when Kirby came over, he basically stole Alabama's defense. And what we're doing now on defense is what they used to do, which is have 5 or 6 guys go in the draft and then come back and dominate again on defense the next year. And they don't do that anymore.
And not only did he do that, but he was the best recruiter they had. And so now because of that, he's, it's not a total zero-sum game, but to some extent it is. And so you see Alabama starting to have to do things like go into the portal to get their first string running back in Gibbs because they don't have the depth there. They got to go into the portal and take a disgruntled receiver from us because they don't have the depth there. And, they did that the year before with Jameson Williams. And so when you see that pattern repeat itself, it kind of, to me, says that they're starting to get some chinks in the armor.
It does. And, I'm not going to be quick to bury Bama because we've wanted to bury Bama, many times over the years. They've still got the number 1 recruiting class for this year. They had the number 1 recruiting class last year, but it just feels a little bit different. Like something's just not gelling the way it used to be. And, if you listen to a lot of Bama fans, they're really down on the coaches. Like Pete Golding, they're really down on. Bill O'Brien, they're really down on. And that's the other thing, not only Kirby leaving, but, Kirby was a very talented defensive coordinator, and now he's our coach. And so whoever they plug in at defensive coordinator is not as good as Kirby Smart is at D coordinator. So, and it's obvious now, who knows how many points we're going to give up to Tennessee, but Kirby will probably be beside himself if we give up 52 points to him.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. But it's so hard to fathom an Alabama defense giving up 52, and they did it. And Tennessee made it look easy.
They did. It was really surprising that that guys were so wide open, that their secondary looked so bad, and Bama didn't do themselves many favors. We had our game on at the same time, and so I was flipping back and forth, so I didn't watch everything. But just watching the penalties, the muff punt, things like that. They did everything that they could to keep Tennessee in the game if they wanted to put it away.
The punt was inexplicable. But it was so awesome because anytime you could get a good Saban rant on the sideline where he's just, going bananas, it just makes me feel all warm inside.
It really does, because those are the things that break games, if you look at like Kent State, for example, McConkey muffs that punt, and it's just one of those things that's going to keep the other team in the game. And Saban knows that, and he's watching that stupid play, and he just loses his mind on the sideline because he knows this is a play that turns the game,
Right. Yep. But, they basically got it back on that fumble towards the end where it just felt like Tennessee was about to just hand it to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sets up a great matchup in Athens. I can't wait for it. And, it's about time. You think the last time Tennessee beat a top 10 team was us in 2006. And that year we didn't deserve to be a top 10 team. We ended up not being one, but we were when we played them. And, 16 years is a long time. So those guys are pretty fired up right now.
But Burt, we gotta focus on Florida first.
We do, yeah.
Because
we gotta focus on all 4 of these games because this is a pretty tough stretch. We haven't had a stretch like this in a while where we go Florida, Tennessee, ranked Mississippi State, ranked Kentucky, both on the road. All 4 of those games, are going to be challenging.
And it's in a 21-day span that we do that.
Which is why I was saying, thank goodness we have a bye week and we can get everybody healthy. And, really my main hope out of Florida is just let's get a W and let's stay healthy, because we need all those guys who are coming back. If they can't come back for Florida, hopefully they'll be back by Tennessee, and we don't lose anybody between now and then.
And it's important to remember this. I mean, Florida is dangerous. I mean, their game against Tennessee, they just practically ran out of time. I mean, they were down there at the end of that game, basically on the 30. I mean, it was close.
Yeah, and it rides on Anthony Richardson, and you don't know what you're going to get from him. At times he looks great. At times he looks like he doesn't care. Like watching him at the end of the LSU game, he threw a 4th down pass, which was their last play of the game. He walked off the field like he just didn't even care. Like it's just another loss. So what? But at times he looks great. It's just, which one are we going to get?
Yeah, it's like Bo Nix. Are you going to get the good Richardson or the bad one? Hopefully, you're going to get the bad one, because he can run like a gazelle.
Right. I mean, you look at Bo Nix. It's hard to say which one we got this year because our defense played so well. But since then, that guy's been off the chart apparently.
Yeah, granted, he's in the Pac-12,
right?
And the game this week against UCLA will tell us a lot.
It will. Yeah, I know. I mean, who do we want Oregon to win that game, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah.
We want them to win out.
Right.
Because it's like I was saying, if at the end of the day, if it's us versus Oregon as to who gets in, it's us.
Yeah, I mean, they can't really make much of a case there. Yeah.
No, they can't.
We left that on the field. Yeah.
Yeah, we left no questions on that one.
Yeah. I got one more great stat for you, and this came out of Saturday. Well, it didn't come out of Saturday. It was kind of punctuated Saturday. Can you tell me who the running back with the highest yards per carry is on our team?
Right now?
Right now. Running back, highest yards per carry.
All right, it's one of the first 4, right? It's one of our first 4 running backs, top 4 strings.
No.
Okay. Oh, okay. Hold on. Is it Cash Jones?
It's Cash Jones. It is Cash Jones. That guy is averaging a ridiculous 22 yards per carry right now.
What? How many carries does he have?
2.
Oh, he's got 2
for 44 yards and a touchdown.
Okay, well then who's next?
Kendall Milton.
I was going to say Kendall Milton. If it was top 4, I was going to say Kendall Milton.
Right, and he's been dogged a little bit, just hesitant at times, but I mean, statistically, Kendall is at like 6.2 yards per carry. And then Dejon's right behind him at like 5.7, and then Branson's right behind him. But yeah, Kendall's the only one over 6 besides Cash.
Let me ask you a question, because one of my main concerns is it looks like to me that our run blocking is just inconsistent. I mean, I see routinely, the opposition waiting for our guys unblocked at the line of scrimmage. Is that just me, or am I just focusing on the negative, or?
No, you're right. And Graham Coffey, who writes for Dog Central, has been talking about that all year long. And what he has said is it's something about the run scheme that we run. It's a gap versus zone run scheme. And apparently we were better in one than another. But really the X factor in all of it was Tate Ratledge and how healthy Tate Ratledge is and how well he blocks. Well, apparently Tate has really come around in the past couple of games. Like he really struggled earlier in the season, and these past 2 to 3 games especially, and we kind of figured this out in the second half of the Missouri game, is we figured out which scheme works best. And then Tate has really come along, and I think he's a lot healthier now. So Yeah, I think that, and having Branson step up like he has been a huge shot in the arm too. I mean, the guy looks 10 times more confident than he did at the start of the year when he has the
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah.
And that's huge, especially with Kendall out. I think we've got a stable of running backs that we can rely on.
Yeah, and the scheme thing, I've heard that too, and then the conspiracy theorist in me just goes, okay, are we like playing possum? Is it like Kirby's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers, and he's not showing how he truly wants to block a play until we truly need to block a play? If that makes any sense.
It does, and that was another thing Graham was talking about is that we have certain running plays that we'll run that are super successful. Like if you think back to the end of the Missouri game when we were running those toss sweeps and just biting off 10, 12 yards per play,
Right.
we really haven't done that much since. And he was talking about how Monken will kind of test these things out and just put them in his back pocket for maybe when we need them, but don't use them if we don't really have to have them.
Right. So Graham Coffey, who does he write for?
He writes for Dawgs Central, and he has a great update every Sunday. It's like his 12 bullet points from the game, and you can find him at I think it's dogscentral.com, and he's on Twitter. His handle is Dogs Out West. He has a great, really insightful, really digs into like what we're doing right, scheming, what Monken's calling, all of that. So it's worth a read for sure.
So does his article feed into the dog bone?
It doesn't. So he is a you have to subscribe to his. He just changed that format a few weeks ago. But it's like $6.99 a month. There are a few guys that I would recommend paying the money to read. And Graham Coffey's one of them. Seth Emerson at the Athletic. If you don't get the Athletic, Seth Emerson does a great job. Obviously, UGA Rivals does a good job. But if you don't want to go the pay route, Senator Blue Tarski would get the picture on our site. It's free.
Right.
And he does a great job, and he links to a lot of that stuff and comments on it. But yeah, Graham's 12 points on Sunday is definitely worth the read.
Yeah, I definitely like those guys at GTP. They put out a good amount of content.
That guy's prolific. It's amazing. I mean, he is so consistent, and he puts out 6 to 7 articles a day, and they're all good. He does a good job of, there's so much noise and information out there. He does a good job of kind of disseminating what we really need to know, what's important.
Yeah, he just kind of boils it all down to, hey, I know you've been hearing this, but here's the real deal.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, are you going to Georgia, Florida?
Headed down there. Yeah, this is our annual dog bone trip. So this is year number 13, I think, for the whole crew. Have our annual meeting, discuss the upcoming year, and
discuss
check out a football game.
Have everybody's annual review, who needs improvement.
That's right.
Action items. So I guess this is the Hodges, the Wiggins, and the Jones families.
Yeah, and Stephen Ham.
Nice.
Yeah, right. So it's the 4 of us.
Well, man, that is...
we'll go over strengths and weaknesses. Steven's got a lot of weaknesses right now, so we'll have to discuss those while we're down there. But
a SWOT analysis of everyone's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Oh, they dread this. They dread this meeting. Yeah,
that is so funny.
Are you going down there?
I'm not. I'll be holding it down just up the road in Savannah, watching it from the lot of Widespread Panic.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, that, how often are you going to have that on Halloween in Savannah on the same day as Georgia, Florida?
It's like we're in college,
I mean, it is. So the planets aligned. So I just thought that was a layup.
Yeah, that's perfect. And are you going to Tennessee?
I will be at Tennessee.
Yeah. All right.
You going to that?
I will not be at Tennessee. We've got a lot of things going on here, so I'll probably have a party in the backyard, and we'll watch it back there.
There you go. There you go. Well, Burt, as always, thank you for joining us. You have tons of great insight. Love your stats, especially the yards per play, and I want to talk about that more as the season goes on.
Good deal. Yeah, we'll update it in a few weeks and see where we are. Hopefully we're at the top then.
Sounds great, man.
Happy birthday.
All right, man. I appreciate it. 42.
Right.
All right. Talk soon. Bye.
It's time for the Mad Dawg Top 12.
And lastly, the Mad Dawg Dirty Dozen is not going to happen this week. We're going to talk about the noise because there's been a lot of noise. There's been a lot of chatter, a lot of talk that we shouldn't be number one anymore, that Tennessee should be number one. And to that, I say, poppycock. That's a load of nonsense. Tennessee has no defense, and that was against an injured Bryce Young, and they're very lucky that Bama missed their field goal. Very lucky, because if Bama doesn't miss that field goal and they make it, the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to have a squib kickoff, and Tennessee's going to get the ball with about 10 seconds on their 30, and the game is over. Tennessee barely beat a pitiful Pittsburgh team. They beat an extremely average LSU team, and other than that, they've beaten Ball State, Akron, and Florida gave them all they wanted until the very end of the game, and they simply ran out of time. So we are the reigning national champs, and we are undefeated, and we are number one, and we're going to stay that way until you beat us, Tennessee, you gaudy, orange-clad, sibling-marrying hillbillies. You are an embarrassment to the South and to the United States in general. The AP says we're number one, and the coaches poll says we're number one. Every poll that matters says that we are number one. Of course, unless you're Kirk Herbstreit and you like to claim that your alma mater is number one, his alma mater being the Ohio State Brown-Eyed Chin Nuts. How convenient. How impartial, said no one ever. The toughest team on their schedule is Notre Dame. This Notre Dame is now 3-3 and just lost at home to Stanford. The combined win and loss of the Ohio State Brown-Eyed Chin Nuts schedule of who they played, well, I'm so glad you asked, because the combined record of the teams they have played is 18-21. So let's break that down. Oh, by the way, the only team that they've played with a winning record is Toledo. They skew it because they've got 5 wins against FCS teams. So pardon me if I'm not ready to anoint them as the kings of college football just yet. I'm going to have to see how they perform against their next Mickey Mouse opponent at least. And that opponent is Iowa. 3-3 Iowa comes to play Ohio State. Not impressed yet? Well, me neither. But they do play Maryland and Indiana and Northwestern. Powerhouses they are not. It's like I'm making up this cupcake schedule. Ohio State literally plays a 2-game season. They play 1 game against Penn State, who I like to call the Pedophilia State Fighting Sandusky's. And Penn State this year is middle of the road at best. As always, trading on their logo, which, by the way, is a blank white helmet and possibly the most boring uniform ever to take the field. The other game in their 2-game schedule is against Michigan. Michigan is another team with a 2-game season. And by the way, their uniforms are the ugliest ever designed. Where am I going with this? Well, where I'm going is the level of competition matters. It matters who you play. It matters how good they are. And if you have a season full of teams that you play that are nobodies, that are no good, then you shouldn't be number one. That should be taken into consideration. And so at the end of the year, when neither Ohio State nor Michigan win a natty, my fellow Mad Dogs won't be surprised at all, because you will simply say, oh yeah, Mad Dawg told me a long time ago, again and again, that both of those teams are overrated. So, that's all for this week's show. Enjoy a stress-free bye week. Get your Mailman for Heisman shirts because I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Go to themaddawg.com and get your Mailman for Heisman shirts. Oh, and by the way, Ohio State, Brown-Eyed Chin Nuts. Stevie Wonder wrote a song for you, and it's called You Ain't Done Nothing. Enjoy, and as always, go Dogs.
'Cause if you really want to hear